In this episode, we sit down with executive producer and director Tim Harris, along with producer Lorna Miller. Together, they reflect on the making of their feature-length film, Kenyatta, Do Not Wait Your Turn. During their conversation, they dive into the importance of representation on set, reflect on the challenges and successes of producing a documentary, and share their experiences of balancing parenthood while working in production.
Every time I talk about how I started at 7 Knots, I always bring this story up. You called me to freelance as a producer. I don't know if you knew what I looked like at the time, but you called me and you were like, yeah, I'm looking for a producer. We'll love you on if you're available. But when you start reaching out to crew, please know, like, I want diversity on set. I don't want a whole bunch of people looking like me. And I didn't know what you looked like at the time. But I just assumed that you were white guy, because that's
correct.
That's normally, what sets look like. And you were like, I want women, I want people of color, I want, people from the queer community. And I was sold instantly, because no one has ever made it their, like, a priority to have diversity on set. Growing up as a PA and not being on sets and in rooms where I'm not only the only woman on set, but the only person of color, you don't know how important it is until you actually have it. And the camaraderie that you get, the easiness that you feel, where normally I just feel like I always have to be buttoned up. I always have to, like, speak a certain way and move a certain way, and certain things I would say, like, yeah, girl. Like, you just don't do that, because there's just this almost a performance that you have to put on, especially as a freelancer. You want to be called back. So when you called me and said, I want diversity on set, I immediately, like, that wall kind of came down a little bit. Being on set, feeling, that I was welcomed, made me, like, perform a little bit better. And I feel like if I would have done a traditional shoot with a whole bunch of older white men, what I'm used to, I don't know if I would have excelled the way that I did. Because in production, curveballs are constantly thrown at you. Yeah. Fires are always, like, there for you to put out. And I don't think I would have been as successful starting off producing if you didn't set that tone. So thank you, sir.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly other people that value that. I'm not the only one. So yeah. I think what's important to me is, like, diversity, and not just, like, how people look, but also in thought too, and, like, different experiences change and make things, just make a more well-rounded experience. And so that's always been important to me, to get, like, different people around me who have different life experiences than me, to help us reflect the world better, I think, is really important to me. And so common sense, in a way, to me, I'm like, why wouldn't I want to have people that are different from me around? Because that's, like, how you learn about the world and how you get better storytelling and get more unique storytelling. Agreed. And so that's why it's important to me. And of course, like, lately, obviously, that's really, like, a buzzword, and, like, diversity, inclusion, and all that is, like, what people talk about. But, like, I want to find a way for that to be important all the time, and not just when it's, like, talked about on the news. And so, like, making sure that we surround ourselves with, people who can help us achieve that goal is really important to me. And I think, like, one thing when you came on staff is, like, now it's not me leading that charge. Now it's you leading that charge, because you, as a producer, you're hiring our crews, and you're, like, reaching out and making new connections to people that we've never met before. And so that's the cool part about it, is, like, as we grow, it becomes a responsibility of all of us to do that. I'm sure you've said the same thing that now that I said to you, to people, like, we really value diversity. And I'm sure someone else has heard you say that and felt the same thing too, like, wow, I've never heard that from a producer before.
Yeah.
As long as we're around as a company, if we're ever not doing that, then something went really wrong, I think.
It's really fulfilling to see younger Black women on set as PAs or, makeup artists or whatever their role is, come up to me and say, oh, you're the producer, or talent, or clients. And that's honestly one of the most compliments we get.
So recently, when we had kind of a little bit of a slow season, I challenged us to get back a little bit to our creative roots. I think we were so in the grind of doing commercials, which obviously we need to do, but we kind of got away from like shorter passion projects and like infusing our voice into things. We were getting a lot of pitches that were, the creative was done and just execute. And so you had your directorial debut. Tell me about like that process for you and like why you decided to step up to the plate and direct, and what it felt like, and directing your kids while you're in a scene. Like
when you said, it's time to get back to our roots, like let's be more creative, let's do some spec projects. I always had an idea of doing something geared towards moms, like working moms, stay-at-home moms, and especially being a working mom in this business, there's just a lot of guilt that comes with it. Long hours, you'll have something planned, a fun day planned, but then a job comes up. You gotta prioritize that. There was one moment, I don't think I was at Seven Knots at the time. I think I was working on a movie, and I felt overwhelmed. I felt like horrible that my youngest just didn't get the attention that my oldest got, because she was born during the pandemic. I was working remotely, but I was up on my laptop at like 6 a.m., not shutting it down till like 10 p.m. I was nursing at the time, and I just felt like she didn't get, my presence. And my oldest came up to me and was like, Mom, like, you're doing a good job. Like, you're the best mommy. And I remembered that moment and was like, oh, maybe I should like write a little love letter to myself, kind of, and hopefully it'll speak to other moms out there. And it was fun. I was very nervous, tapping into the creative side and trying to focus on that, but not being able to shut off my producer brain, I found very challenging. I was trying to find things that were free or cheap. Like, we're shooting at my house. I'll go, to Target real quick, pick up some props that I don't have.
Free talent.
Yeah, free talent. I asked you guys very early on, like, do you think your wives would want to be a part? And I was very nervous about having our children because working with child actors, it's not always easy. And the fact that they're our own children, I just immediately assumed it was going to be harder. But the day actually went smooth. It went a lot smoother than I thought.
It's awesome.
It was kind of cool to see my 7-year-old, following in her mom's footsteps, trying to be the boss, telling everyone what to do. I really enjoyed myself. I'm not gonna lie. And it kind of like put a little spark. I have some other ideas that I've been thinking of. Yeah. So okay. I don't want the creative part of me to die. So, and I think it's very important because I told you guys, I don't think there's a lot of content out there for moms, for women in general, that you're just not trying to sell us an outfit, some sort of product or whatever, diapers. Just speaking to who we are. I feel like women often when we work, we have to hide that we have children. We have to just, work twice as hard and make a lot of sacrifices for our personal lives. And growing up, I didn't see a lot of women in our industry, and I don't think I saw anyone, with the exception of clients, I didn't see any women in production that had children. Wow. Wow. So to be honest, there was a point where I was just like, maybe I won't have children and just keep working and traveling. And my mom was pretty much like, that's fine if that's what you really want, but don't wake up at like 60 years old regretting it. So when it came to the conversation of, between my husband and I, do we want to grow our family? To be honest, I was a little hesitant because I knew I was going to have to make some sacrifices. But, everything worked out. So it's not easy by any means, but I think it worked out. And I think working with younger women, PAs, and they're like, just to see you like on a Zoom call, quickly grab a coloring book or a tablet, put in someone's hand so you can continue your conversation is very inspirational. So
yeah,
it makes me feel good knowing that, the long days, the tears, me constantly doubting myself, feeling like I'm not good enough. Someone's watching, and it's like making them feel like they can do it too. So
yeah. I think what was so great about that day, the shoot day for Mother's Day, was we hear about all our kids all the time. We each have 2 kids, and I have another one on the way. So
congratulations.
About to be in the lead up in here.
I didn't know you were going to say it.
Yeah. But just seeing all the kids in person and like putting a face to the name and like seeing everyone parent in person too, and seeing the kids play together, like when they were shooting hoops and all that, like it was just really fun. To your point, it's really hard being a parent when you work in production because of the hours. And it's like your husband, Drew, also is in the business and works odd hours too. And finding like coverage when you need it, like if your partner or spouse is working, it's like it can be really, really grueling. And I think you touched on a lot of like really true points there about like how it can be, especially for working mothers. Because, typically, up until recently, it's been like my mom stayed home. My mom worked part-time, and like she was able to watch us all summer. And now like both parties have to be working now in these days with like how expensive everything is now. It's like pretty impossible just to have a stay-at-home parent.
Well, switching gears and going into the feature documentary, which was, I want to say, a life-changing experience because it was my first time working on a feature documentary in the way that I did. And I'm curious to know, I feel like I know the answer, but like, how did you and Malcolm meet?
So we met at Temple University when we were both students there. I was working on a student-run show called Temple Smash. Alumni such as Quinta Brunson was on the show, star of Abbott Elementary. There's like a Daily Show writer who worked on the show. We worked with some people. It was really fun. And one of our hosts happened to be Malcolm Kenyatta on one of the episodes. He was a poet around campus at that time, and so he was really known as like a public performer, honestly, just like on the streets of Temple. And so he was invited to host, and he did the whole, monologue thing. I think he did a sketch called Kenyatta's Pinatas, where he was a pinata salesman. It was like very college-y. But he was awesome. He was a really nice guy, super amazing talent just as a performer. And I just kept in touch with him. And just over the years, just kind of saw him as he was kind of coming up as an activist. He was an activist for several years before he was elected to office. Fast forward to 2016, the first Women's March, the day after that guy was inaugurated president. And I brought my camera to the event just to sort of capture it. And I was up towards the art museum, and there was this big stage. People were giving speeches. I was just about to leave, and they called up the next speaker was going to be Malcolm Kenyatta. I was like, oh, I know him. I'm going to still film this, see what happens. And he was an amazing performer in college, but like in the 5 or 6 years since I'd probably seen him in person, just like got even better. The speech was amazing. It was like people were going crazy. And it was just a great speech about how we're not going to go backwards. We're going to take all this pain that we're going through right now, and we're going to use it as fuel to move forward. It was really powerful. And so I messaged him on Facebook with the video, and he was like, this is great. I'm going to share it all around. And I said, if you're ever going to do anything more with your activism, or if you're going to run for office, please let me know. And he's like, I'm never running for office. And I was like, okay.
That aged well.
Okay. Yeah, it aged well. And then fast forward to 2018, he did decide to run for state rep in his home district in North Philadelphia. And he became the first openly gay black person elected to any Pennsylvania state office. And so we captured his election day as part of a short documentary called Going Forward that premiered on The Atlantic. You can find that pretty easily online. Several years later, I was seeing he was, gaining all this buzz. He was on TV a lot. He was posting about neighbors that didn't support him his first time, that really supported him his second time. And so actually my first idea was I approached him and I was like, what if we follow you every election day over the course of 10 years? And then 10 years later, we cut it up into a feature doc and just show like the evolution of your career and of a politician. He's like, that's cool, but I'm running for Senate this year. And I was like, wow, okay, well, that's going to be historic. Maybe we just like dive in fully now. And so that's how it started. And what is it, almost 3 years later, basically still working on the film. Obviously it's done, it's edited, but still trying to get it out there every day.
When people close their eyes and say senator, a picture of me does not come up in their head. And that's the problem, right? Like, that's the problem. Good morning! Not just being queer, gay, but also being Black, also being from, a poor community. Like, when you know what it's like to be marginalized and treated unfairly simply because of who you are, I think you make a better legislator.
Kenyatta, Do Not Wait Your Turn is a feature documentary. Our executive producer is Al Roker from Al Roker Entertainment. Expedition, they're a production company out in LA. They're another production partner of ours. And the film follows Malcolm through his run for Senate in 2022 in Pennsylvania. And it's a story about what it means to be electable in America and about some of the challenges that non-white male candidates face getting elected in America today. It's also a love story. It's a love story too. It's very personal, and I think that's what sets it apart from other political films, is that you're following, this relationship between Malcolm and his now husband, Dr. Matt, in a very intimate way. You see their wedding, you see them kind of going through struggles together, and you don't often see, gay Black men in a political setting at all. And so to see that relationship, I feel like, unfold on screen, that's been hands down the most resonant part of the film. When we've taken it out to festivals, people are always like, the love story. And Dr. Matt is a crowd favorite for sure. Everyone loves him. Of course they love Malcolm, but like, got to give Dr. Matt some shine.
Yeah, it's my favorite part, the love story, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a first generation American. Most people from the Caribbean, from the continent of Africa, like your parents, you're either going to be a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, just something, a little more steady in their eyes. So working in TV was just never an option. At a very young age, they tell you who you're going to be, what you're going to do. And I think this film has the power to kind of put in the ears of young kids, if you want to make a whole bunch of money, or it's always the sports route, or everyone wants to be a rapper or a singer. But if you really want to make change, like, why not enter the political realm and, be the voice of your community, of your peers? I think that is where, that's going to be the weight of this film. What kept you going? Because I know the hiccups that we've been running into on making this film, even in the aspect of, you had an idea of, we're just following his campaign. What were your thoughts on that? Because I know you talked about documentary making is literally just following the story, and the story will tell itself. But especially for, young creators who are getting into the documentary game, what does that look like?
It's a journey. And it's not linear, It kind of like creativity. This is like your baseline, right? But there are some days where you hate everything you're doing, and then some days where you're like, I am really good at this, and I'm proud of myself. And it's that, like, for 3 years, just all on one project. I think what kept me going, though, to answer your question, is many things. Number one, it was my incredible participants in the film. Malcolm and Matt are just amazing and brilliant people. And so anytime that I felt tired or like frustrated, I would have a shoot day with them that was like, okay, all right, this is going to be good. This is going to be good, just because of whatever we captured that day. And I think like probably 95% of shoot days, I'm like, there's something useful here. because it was a verite doc, fly on the wall. So like you run the risk of shooting a day that's going to be a waste. But there weren't really many wastes with this shoot at all. And then I would say the second thing is all of you who were working with me on the doc telling me, like on the days where I was venting about something or frustrated, telling me how worth it was going to be, which was important. And then obviously my wife, like letting me kind of go crazy making this thing, and like knowing we never had money for it, never, doing it for free, basically. No one was getting paid. She trusted the story that much while we had 2 kids. And I was like, if she is going to invest in this, I can't, and like let me do it. I knew it was worth it. And then the third phase of it has been now taking it around to festivals and seeing the reaction. You know, we've gotten some standing ovations, which has been nice. We've had some sellouts. In London, of all places, we had a sellout. In LA, we had a sellout. Places nowhere near Philly, who maybe have never heard of Malcolm, definitely haven't heard of me. And knowing that people are getting something really special out of the film is now what's keeping me going now, as we try to find distribution. My question to you would be similar. Before you came on to be staff at 7 Knots, I called you and I said, 2022 is going to be crazy. I'm doing this documentary. I'm probably not going to be around that much. Like, I'm going to be out shooting. I'm going to be on calls. I'm going to be starting to edit. I just want you to know that before you take this job and before you like trust that this job is okay for you to take. I want to be transparent, so you're not like taking this job. You're like, where's Tim? Like, I wanted to come and be a part of what he was building. What were your thoughts when I said that to you? Was there ever any hesitation, or like what made you buy into the story, and why is the story special to you?
Like you said, meeting Malcolm and Dr. Matt, first of all, hair, phenomenal. Dr. Matt's hair is just, that needs to be a documentary in itself.
And for a guy without any hair, I'm like, come on, man.
But when you meet them, you literally, what you see is what you get. They are so personable. They are, I love saying this, they are walking Hallmark cards with just how they speak to one another, how Malcolm speaks to his audience. It's just constantly being motivated when you're not even looking for it. And I told you, I want to be on the right side of history. I think this story needs to be told. I think in order to really change how America views politics and how we do politics, we need people that look like Malcolm, that look like me, that look like Dr. Matt running the show. Because oftentimes those are the people that get hit the hardest when things happen. I wanted to be a part of a film, like a documentary. I've never done it. I love hearing people's stories, going back to my Oprah days. It was just very intriguing, and he had an amazing story. Art imitates life, and there was always something that either Malcolm would say or Dr. Matt would say, or just how we would encourage one another. If we got bad news, someone wasn't interested or would pass on the film, how we were encouraging one another on our Zoom calls, manifesting like, this is going to get completed whether we have the money or not, and it did. We're going to be in festivals, and now we're in festivals. So it felt good to be in that space. And I remember you saying, I don't have any extra money to like on top of your salary. So it was kind of like a leap of faith. And I was just talking to a friend of mine. They were asking about the film, and I was like, it's the good work. It's the good work that you get to do that you don't necessarily get paid for, but it's so rewarding because you put something out there that means something. And I think this film is doing just that. Like, it's really going to encourage the next generation and, older generations to really do not wait your turn. And, whatever it is that you want to do that you feel will spark change, positive change, I think Malcolm and Dr. Matt are the perfect subjects to kind of witness and follow their journey.
If you don't mind, like taking it back to the personal side for you about like how it kind of mirrored your story a little bit.
Oh yeah. So my favorite part of the film is the counter proposal, wherein Dr. Matt proposes or counter proposes to Malcolm. And he says the line,
"I'm asking you not to marry me, but to mirror me."
Just bars. That was such a beautiful line. Their journey, Malcolm's journey, mirrored my own. Malcolm is the first openly gay person of color to run for Senate. And when you don't have someone to mirror, it's very hard. And I found myself in this business not seeing a lot of Black women, a lot of women in general. And if I did see them, just how they were respected or constantly looked over or silenced kind of makes you want to silence yourself. So seeing Malcolm not really have a blueprint to follow, but boldly kicking down doors, saying, "You will see me, you will notice me, you will hear what I have to say," was just like so encouraging. And like I said earlier, putting that battery in my own back to face some of the challenges that I face every day, just being a woman of color.
Just hearing that, makes the film worth making, honestly. As long as it affects one person, that's worth it. As a documentary filmmaker, where there's 1,000 documentaries being made every year, literally, like you talk about rejections. We're still getting rejections, and one of the rejections we got last night said 1,000 people submitted their film for consideration for this opportunity. And you have to be okay that maybe it won't get as far as you want it to go, but if you can have an impact on one person and then maybe that person shows it to someone else, like, that means a lot. And you can't take that for granted as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker who's trying to make something that resonates. And it will find a home at some point, but I also do think because of the power of Malcolm, he's not going anywhere. And so, like, this story is going to be able to come back every time he does something incredible, because he's not going to stop doing incredible things. When you shared that the first time, it meant a lot, and it affected me deeply, because that's why I wanted you to work on the film. There's only a certain amount that I can truly understand based on my background. And so I needed people to be a part of the film who could 100%, identify with the things that they're talking about. And so I think that the fact that we were able to accomplish that, and that everyone was a huge part of the creative process and the edit with notes and all that, like, it was just a true joy to make the film. It is life-changing. I want to do it again, and hopefully we can do it in a way where we all get paid, maybe. I want to thank you for everything you did for the film, because you're still doing a lot for the film. The one thing I want to touch on quickly is this idea of trust, which I think is kind of like inherent throughout the conversation we're having. I think you and I have a great trust of each other, and we're building all this trust with our clients and with our crews. And specifically on this one, it was like the amount of goodwill that people brought towards this project is something that I think you and I will never forget. Like, these relationships that we've built with everyone who worked on this movie, who just did it, and we were very transparent the whole time. Like, we're sorry, but if you're down, like, we think this is an incredible story. And people came along for the ride and stayed on the ride, and I think are grateful that they stayed on the ride. I think that's a testament to what we're building, and you were a huge part of that, because you were making a lot of times those calls to say, like, hey, are you available to shoot this debate or this random community event or Malcolm getting a haircut,
Yeah.
So thank you for everything that you did for the film.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I do want to say that, like, people from the margins are constantly told no. So there's times where you'll call me, we'll get a bad email, like, yeah, we're going to pass on this film. I don't really get shaken up by things like that, because I'm so used to it, unfortunately. But like I said, art imitates life. And watching Malcolm kick down doors after they've been slammed in his face, I feel like, in a way, making this film is going to kind of mirror his experience. We're going to hear a lot of no's, and that's just honestly the industry. if we keep doing what we're doing our due diligence, and we're going to, keep trying our hardest to get it in front of as many eyes as possible, it's going to hit the perfect eye that will take to its home. And I really believe that. It's like I said, it's the good work that I'm very proud to be a part of.
What's one piece of advice you would give to yourself at the beginning of the process? Like if you could go back, knowing what you know now.
You have what it takes to do this. It's not different from what you're already doing. I think because it was my first time, I was hung up on that and a little intimidated, but I would tell myself back then, like, you got this, girl. What about you?
I think it would be more in the moment. I think as I was editing, I was able to appreciate certain things that I didn't necessarily notice were happening when we were on set. And I think it's because you can get so bogged down in every single detail about like logistics of when a shoot is happening, or someone saying no to something, or being disappointed about a rejection of some sort. And I wish that I could have seen the forest through the trees a little bit more throughout the process. And I think it would have taken a little bit of stress if I could have just like been a little bit more like just one foot in front of the other. I think there were some days where I was really good at that, other days where I wasn't. And I think it's still a muscle I'm trying to work out. But I think a piece of general advice that I would give any documentary filmmaker out there is don't put your narrative on the story at all, because my personal thought of where it was going when I started is not where it ended up. When I started the film, I honestly thought he would have a decent chance to win, just because of his popularity growing and growing and growing. And I think he did put up a really good fight, as you see in the film, but I thought the numbers at the end would be closer, if not end with him winning. And I did not anticipate how strong some of these, forces against against candidates like Malcolm are, or, first-time statewide candidates are in general. And so having to adapt to that story was crucial. We finally were able to see it, I would say maybe, midway through production, that, okay, this is kind of the news story. It's about like these systemic issues. If I had just stuck to like, all right, this is going to be, a story of triumph throughout the whole thing, it would have been me taking my eye off the ball. And as a documentarian, if you're doing especially, a verite, fly on the wall doc, adaptability is everything. And so being as nimble as possible and finding crews that are okay with the plan changing, as they often did on this documentary. You would think a day was going one way and it would completely change midway through. So yeah, I would just say be flexible and allow the story to tell itself, and don't try to force any narrative on it, because it won't come out as feeling true in the end.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you
like
today.
We do every day.
Every day. So for our martini shot, there's some fun questions that we have here.
Cool.
Number one would be best plot twist in a movie.
All right. So it's got to be Luke, I am your father. It's got to be that from The Empire Strikes Back. I can see you're giving me a blank stare. You've never seen Star Wars, have you?
No.
Wow. That changes this. We got to go back and redo this whole interview because it changes my entire. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's got to be that. I mean, it's one of the most classic movies, one of my favorite movies. What's yours?
Mine would be, I would say, The Orphan. Have you ever seen that? So it's about an orphan that like goes to live with his family, and crazy stuff happens, and come to find out she's an adult that's like a killer and is trying to kill the parents. She's an adult the whole time, but she looks like a child. Oh. That was, yeah.
That does sound like a plot twist.
It was. It was a grown woman the whole time. Favorite crafty snack?
It's got to be fruit snacks. Everyone probably says that, but it has to be the Welch's fruit snacks. It's just like, it's the pick-me-up that you need. It's the old reliable. It's always there. And 3 o'clock, 3:30, you got to get that Starbucks along with the Welch's fruit snacks and call it a day. But what about you?
I would say the champagne at the end of what we call wrap.
See, but that's VIP only. I don't know if that counts as crafty.
No, we've gotten like beers and little bottles of champagne or wine on set.
True.
But crafty has to be probably chocolate, like a cookie or a little piece of brownie. Perfect.
Yeah. No one ever eats the bananas or the apples. So
no.
It's like, why do we even get those?
It's for show. Last question. What book would you turn into a film if you could?
Oh, man. I think I would turn this into more of a parody of a book because I think, like, there's so many books about, or movies now about, like, businesses starting, and it's, like, becoming a little corporate. But I could see, like, an Adam McKay-style twist on this book called Tinderbox, and it's an oral history about, like, how HBO got started and behind-the-scenes stories about how they created shows like Game of Thrones and Sex and the City and Sopranos. It's like, it's a very, very long book, but I feel like if you picked a couple morsels from that, you could do some sort of like parody about like how corporations are bad.
Mine would be Viola Davis's autobiography. I can't remember the name, but her story is crazy of growing up in poverty and, you know, being an EGOT winner is just amazing. And I don't know who would play her because she's, you know, one of the best actresses ever. But I would love to see that turn into a movie. So
a lot of people ask how they can help the film or how they can learn more about the film. The best way is to follow us on social media at Kenyatta Film on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can also write a review about the film on Letterboxd. And then just spread the word. You know, we have a website, which is also kenyattafilm.com. And we have a sign up for our newsletter. And so any announcements about any festivals or distribution, hopefully very soon, will be there. The one thing I can say is we will definitely have educational distribution. It's just a matter of timing on that. So you should, hopefully next year in 2024, if you go to a college somewhere or you teach at a college, you should have access to that, I would say, in 2024 as an option to, you know, have discussion or invite a member of the team, whether it's myself or Al or Malcolm, to speak for your class. And yeah, as you said earlier, it'll be streaming somewhere next year. So just gotta,
you better believe it.
Just gotta wait on that. And then just generally at 7 Knots Films on Instagram is a way to find out what we're up to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we post a lot of our work on there. You can always message us and say hi. We're always looking to meet people. It's nice chatting with you, Lorna.
All right. Thank you, Timothy. Yeah. It was a pleasure today.
Thanks for listening to Forte. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe for new episodes and follow @FortePod on Instagram for the latest updates and bonus content from today's guests. The Forte Podcast is a production of Maestro Filmworks and is filmed and recorded at Symphony Studio in Philadelphia.